Hey y'all, what's up? It's Anthony, and I think you are going to love this conversation that I had with life coach, Enneagram expert, and overall dope human being, Kristin Messegee. It's insightful, it's illuminating, it's funny. Enjoy.
Can we talk about how we met? We have to do that, right?
Let's talk about how we met.
Yeah.
So first of all,
Okay.
thank you so much for stopping by.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. Mm-hmm. I can't believe that we're finally linking up.
I know.
After all these years. Mm-hmm. The way we met was incredible. How do you remember it? What do you remember?
I was coming home from seeing a friend on an airplane, and there was this lovely little girl next to me.
Where were you coming from?
I was in the window, Washington State.
Washington State?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So this lovely girl, and then you were on the aisle.
It's true.
Yeah. We just started chatting.
It's true.
You were coming from China.
It's true.
Your whole family had just gone to China. We started chatting, and we just kind of started talking. Yeah. Remember we argued about football?
Yep.
And we started talking about life and people.
Yep.
The stuff that really is interesting to me and you. We just hit it off. And then I found out you lived in Georgetown, and I lived in Leander. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're close.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
Same.
Yeah. We must have exchanged info.
We
obviously.
did. I said, can I find you on social media?
That's
I
right.
said, I'll post a video of our China thing,
That's
of our
right.
China trip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
What I remember is Cassidy was about 5-ish, mm-hmm. and you were very sweet. You were very friendly toward her, which I appreciated very much. And it felt like there was a little moment where you guys just came from China?
And then the floodgates opened. Because I was like, tell me everything.
Yeah.
And then you started telling me about how that had come about and how you all make those decisions.
Yeah.
I was like, this family.
Yeah.
This is a cool family.
So thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I wanted to have you here, I'm doing a series of conversations with people who I know, like, trust for various reasons. And I've seen you since that conversation in the airplane like 5 years ago.
Yep.
Build up your own personal brand, your own personal coaching business, the Enneagram system. What is this?
So the Enneagram is essentially a tool for self-awareness.
Okay. I love that. Straight out of the gate.
I know, right? Yeah, that's why I love it too. So there's 9 types. What it really does is show you who you are when you're in stress and what you look like when you are in a more healthy version of you. So sometimes it can feel negative because it really is a tool. It's kind of a shortcut. So like, this is your crap. These are your predictable patterns of when you're not doing well. This is how you show up in your relationships. This is what happens in your mind. Like, this is really what you look like when you're not doing well. And again, this is also what you look like when you're doing better. So there's a whole lot of movement within the system. It's a really interesting looking thing.
Yeah, I've looked at
lines and arrows and all
There's
this
a
stuff.
lot of charts.
Yeah.
There's wings.
There's
and if
wings.
you're this, then your wing element is that.
There's tri-types, there's subtypes. It's a very deep system when you really get into it. Yeah. And
So
you can kind of come and go in and out of it, but it's very revealing.
Before we get into the specific types, there are 9.
Yeah.
You're a 6.
I'm a 6.
Right? I saw your video where you said my 60 people or what have you. Hey, that was witty. That was clever. I like that.
60 is definitely, I think, it's become my brand. Yeah.
What's the main characteristic of a 6?
Super loyal.
The
loyalist.
Skeptical,
yes.
The loyalist.
Now, with all things Enneagram, that's a little tongue in cheek. So 6s are kind of your ride or die. If
I love that
relationship is working, but we will be loyal to things long past their due date also, like long past the time when maybe they should have ended. So there's a whole bunch around loyalty that I could talk about, but the skepticism is a big thing. There's a lot of planning for the worst case. 6s are the people you want around you to say, what could go wrong here?
Right.
But we can live there. And so a lot of the work is not living there because a lot of things could also go right.
Yeah.
But we're the ones who are going to troubleshoot automatically.
Which is a great quality.
It's a great quality.
But you're right. You don't want to live there. It can prevent you from taking risks.
Oh my gosh.
I imagine that the people you deal with and help, oftentimes you're trying to convince them to go for the thing that they know they want, but they go, what if these 10 things
They don't know what they want.
They don't.
No. That's a huge piece of it. Do you know what you want? How do we help you discover what you want?
I might be a 6.
I actually think you might be a 6. I have thought this many times, actually.
Now, you're a person who I've consulted, full disclosure, I've consulted in my own personal life as a friend.
Yep.
And said, hey, I'm here. I'm thinking about some things and gotten your feedback. So I very much appreciate your opinion and your insight on things. Before we break down what a 6 is too much, What's this system? Like, who created this system? Where did this system come from?
It's so debatable. To the Enneagram, like, purists out there,
Sure.
I'm sorry to say this, I don't care.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know.
I like that.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
I use it as a tool. You can get real deep and spinny in it. I'm a very action-focused person. I'm a very action-focused coach. So I just don't spend time there. And I use a lot of other tools in my coaching business. Like the Enneagram is really how I market because I really love working with sixes, but it's not the only tool I use. It's one of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you deal with sixes specifically.
That's right.
And what determines what number you are? Is it your birthday? Is it where you were born? Is there a test you take?
There are tests. They're fairly unreliable because the amount of self-awareness you have to accurately get a good type on a test is quite high.
I could see that.
So we do say in the Enneagram world, get a test to kind of start your journey, but really read about the types because it's all about your core fears, your core desires, like really your internal motivations. Those are actually really hard to know.
I bet.
So one of the things about having a coach, right, is having someone actually show you your own brain.
Yeah.
Sixes also have this deep sort of disconnect with themselves, like a real lack of self-trust is one of the hallmarks of sixiness as well.
Okay. I think my wife is a 3, the achiever. And then there was a triangle, and then she was she came across to it was a 6.
Yeah,
Wasn't it
3,
doesn't
6,
3
and
line up
9.
with 6? Yeah, 3 lines up with 6.
3, 6, and 9 are in a triangle.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap there.
It's like the Ying Yang Twins song, 3, 6, 9. Damn, she fine. Suck it to me one more time. Get low, get low, get low, get low. 3, 6, 9.
Yeah. There's a lot of angst in 6, The other thing, though, is 6s will get pinned with being the anxious ones, which is annoying. Anyone can have anxiety, obviously.
I saw a characteristic of a 6 that said good financial planning.
Yeah, that's not me.
That's not you.
And this is where it gets deep into the ways that 6s specifically, but all numbers can present very differently. But 6 has a huge variety of how they present based on their subtype, which we're not going to get into.
Okay.
And the wings, which we're not going to get into. But there's a whole lot of different ways that we can present. I personally am not that 6. My anxieties and focus is all in relationship. But a lot of 6s are all about the resources, the money and the time and the things, and they're excellent managers of such things.
Which is important.
Yep. Oh, so important.
So congratulations. You've been married. You had an anniversary recently. 15 years. Is that right?
It is, but it feels so
Congratulations.
anticlimactic because we actually first started dating 25
Oh,
years
my Lord.
ago.
Yeah, you need credit for at least
Right?
half of those.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So every year it actually is like, wah, wah,
Yeah.
because I'm like, but all those other years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still cool. 15
Yeah.
years.
Maybe a
But
little
there
bit.
also was a breakup in there.
Uh-oh. Do you look at people in your everyday life and go, she's a 2, or like, she's a 4? You could tell for sure. Did she cut me off? She's a 3. She's a 3.
I do not.
You don't?
I really don't. I'm like, is this true? I do type people.
Yeah.
But one of the core tenets of the Enneagram, well, it depends on who you ask, of course. Don't type other people. Like it's, unless you're doing it to build compassion. I mean, this is one of the beauties of the tool. It's like, so if I know someone's core fears, then I'm going to be more compassionate to when I see their behavior, I'm going to look deeper.
Right.
This is one of the things that gives us access to. It is often not used that way, but I want to understand people better so I don't look at their behavior quite as judgmentally. Like behavior does not dictate what the heck is going on inside a human. It's not that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But this is getting into my philosophies as a coach as well, obviously. But I don't think it's useful to be like, oh, you're just a da-da-da.
Like you said, I also see how you might have more insight oftentimes to what's driving people's behavior, more insight than they have themselves if a person doesn't have
Absolutely.
a very high level of self-awareness.
Totally.
Yeah. You coach people individually, you coach people one-on-one, you coach in groups. How did you how'd you get past your own, did you have fear surrounding that?
No.
You didn't?
Of course I did.
I was going to say, damn, I
Easy
thought.
peasy.
Yeah. All right, guys, gather around.
exactly.
Coach Kristin's in the house. Everybody take a knee. How did you get past your own fears and move into the world of coaching people and helping people in their lives?
It almost felt like it was fear that made it happen. Like, if not this, what will I do with my life? I always had two things I always said. I'm only good at people.
Okay.
And if I could just find a way to monetize my people skills. These were things I said years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
And then growing up, having kids, my husband and I decided I would go back to work when they hit kindergarten because I stayed home with them.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I was going to do because I'd never had a career that I loved. I didn't really want to do anything. And life coaching was this thing that was kind of always out there.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah.
That sounds horrifying and terrifying and not who I am.
Yeah. And very nebulous, right? Like, how do you do that? It's not, there are other careers that's very straight line, linear.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I found a school that I knew would teach me really good skill set and would teach me how to build a business.
Okay.
And I just went all in. And it really was, if not this, what am I going to do with my life?
Right.
So that was actually kind of fear. It was two sides, right? It was desire and excitement and knowing I would be great at it. And also fear of there's nothing else I want to do because I want the freedom to be an entrepreneur. I want the flexibility. I want to be home for my kids after school. Like I wanted all that so desperately.
Yeah.
I didn't see another way to create it in something I'd be absolutely passionate about every single day. So it kind of was do or die.
Wow.
Really. There was no backdoor for me.
A lot of people who come to you, a lot of sixes probably are in that same exact scenario. So you have the life experience to say, I faced those same issues, right?
Yeah.
I overcame those things and here's what worked for me and maybe they can work for
Totally.
you.
Yeah. So I have the tools that I use. I have my own experience, which this is the great thing about coaching, like as opposed to therapy, is I can just, there's no rules, right? It's the great thing and the horrible thing about coaching is that there's no rules. It's totally unregulated. So I do use my own experience a lot, but I also have learned not to put that on my clients, even though we have the same makeup in a lot of ways. I've learned to really hear where they're at and not make assumptions. That was one of the things I was doing wrong in the beginning of my business.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you have a skill set, you have tools, you have your experience. The tools that I started with are extremely incisive. Like you want to know yourself really well? Here, let me show you you. Let me show you your brain. If someone is not emotionally sturdy enough to see themselves very clearly, that can be devastating. Right?
That probably wasn't meant to be hilarious, but
I mean,
that's hilarious.
I
really want to know me. Here you go. Oh my God.
Right? It's like, let me take all of your
like
comfort, all of your masks.
Yeah. Yanking this mask off, and the person goes, holy,
No
I'm
helping.
horrid.
This is such a huge piece
No one
of
will
the
ever
work.
love me.
Right.
I'm worse than I thought.
That's exactly it. They're like, please show me me.
Yeah.
And it's like, here you are. And it is horrifying. I mean, in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, it really can be.
Yeah.
So no helping person has a right to do that.
Okay, so you're
I
saying
didn't
don't
know
do
that.
that. I'd be just walking around flashing everybody.
No.
Look at this, you ugly mother.
And you would get
Yeah,
the results
I'd be
of
out,
that.
I'd be out of business.
You'd
quick.
be out of business really quick. Yeah, I really had to learn because I have a high tolerance to see myself clearly. It is one of my most precious values.
Okay.
Is see who I am, see how I'm contributing, see what I'm creating. So I assume people show up with that.
Yeah.
It's not the case.
Wow.
So I've really had to learn a lot about holding space safely.
Huh.
Yeah, creating
Yeah.
safety and giving that little push.
Yeah.
It's something you have to learn. It's an art. It's a real art.
See, that's the difference between a professional and someone who has real experience doing this
Yeah.
and just like a friend in the break room
That's exactly
who's
right.
gonna be like, you went back to this cheat again. You deserve it. Like, oh my God, I thought you were my friend.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Really learning how to help someone feel safe enough so their nervous system
Yeah.
can change. Yeah, this is subconscious stuff.
Yeah.
How do we actually create enough calm and safety for our nervous system to make a change in front of someone else? It's very intimate.
Yeah.
Right? It's really deep
Yeah.
stuff. I love it.
So, although I'm a big proponent of therapy, and I always encourage people to go to therapy,
Yep, absolutely.
I've never been to therapy. And a lot of people read my book and they're like, how long were you in therapy? Like, that book was the therapy.
Okay, that is fascinating.
So, for me personally, I think one of the things that's always kept me from therapy is exactly what you just said.
Yes.
Like the intimacy of a person. I'm like, nah,
Yep.
nah, man.
Right.
So how do you establish that with people?
I mean, I want to answer that question, but
First of all, let me say from my perspective,
Yeah.
you're very genuine. You're
That's
very
one way.
kind.
Yeah.
You're very likable.
yeah. When people work with me,
Yeah.
they say, you are who I thought you were.
Yeah.
Which to me is like the highest compliment. It actually makes me really emotional
I could see that.
because that is what I want. I want to be the person that when you're like, hey, help me, you get the same
Right.
person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because I do feel like being genuine is it's a healthy 6 quality. It's something I hold just in such high regard, like being real, being authentic. Authenticity is the word you'll hear in the 6C brains, because it's just such a high value. That has kind of a dark side that we won't get into, but
Uh-oh.
me being who I am is super important. The dark side, not to be all cryptic, is like
God, hang
my
on.
desire to be authentic can mean I need to tell you how I feel about all the things all the time. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And not sort of be aware of the impact of that.
I do.
Yeah.
If that's the dark side,
Yeah.
that's not that dark. Yeah.
It can be to the people you're in a relationship
It's a
with.
minor inconvenience.
Not
when
to
I think
a lot of
dark,
people. Oh,
I go
see
back
what
to
you
the
mean.
you and Bob breakup and what could have potentially happened in that window and what you might.
Which I'm happy to go. I'm happy to talk about all of that.
What happened during the breakup with you and Bob?
Well, let's see. So I can't tell his story.
Okay.
Because that's his story.
Very good.
And I married someone else.
What?
Yes!
That ain't a breakup, sis. That's a whole other ass marriage.
Well, we didn't know it was going to be a breakup. We didn't know it was going to like end, you
Yeah.
know, in like my favorite love story of all time.
Oh
We didn't
my-
know that at the time.
Okay.
We dated and it was lots of drama and trauma.
Okay.
So
This is you and Bob.
this is me and Bob. So I had all my big T trauma stuff happened when I was a teenager. I say capital T trauma. To me, those are the things that are in the realm of sexual abuse, any kind of real abuse. But like the big things that we think about, the really obvious, that was traumatic for you. That changed your brain. That changed who you are. Little T, and this is all very debatable, if this even is a thing, is your sort of like more benign neglect that you grew up with, right? Living in a family where your emotional needs were never met, but you had food and, you know, clothes and
Right.
whatever. So you could look back and you could say, I had a perfectly healthy childhood. Why am I such a mess? It's like, well, if we dig in a little bit more, you actually didn't get all of these different needs met. That also changed your brain, formulated who you were. So I spent 15 to 24 probably, you know, acting out my just unbridled personality and self-medicating for trauma all those years.
Okay.
So when Bob and I met and we were 20 at an Outback Steakhouse, it was party,
Yeah.
right? That was the lifestyle. All drugs, drinking, all the things. So we loved each other, but we're completely in the throes of that life.
Right.
So we broke up because, you know, those
course.
sorts of
It's
things
not
end.
sustainable, yeah.
It's not sustainable. I married someone else, which honestly was like, I don't even know.
He's a
what that
fill-in. Bob's the guy.
Exactly.
Okay.
I did a bunch of therapy, got sober, did a bunch of anger management.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Damn, you were out there.
Oh, I was out there.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I put myself in treatment.
Wow.
I very quickly took myself out of treatment. I was like, this is not
for
where I
you.
belong.
Yeah.
But, you know, started my day with an antidepressant and an AA meeting for a really long time. It was deep.
Yeah.
But I was always like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out my life.
Right.
Came back together as more adult versions of ourselves. Back at Outback. I want to
Hey,
say...
what is it with Outback?
I don't
Outback gets
know.
you going.
we just kept ending up working there. Came back together as adults, and both of us were like, clearly we can't be together. Obviously, this is irreparably broken.
Yeah.
Could not stay apart. So did a whole dramatic thing for a while and finally gave it up and got together. And
Figured
that
out.
was 15 years ago.
Wow. How'd you tell your husband, hey, listen, I'm sober now. I thought you were Bob this whole time. You're not. It's over.
It went like this. I had seen him cut people out of his life multiple times. Like he was who he was. And I said one day, I don't think I can do this anymore. And he filed for divorce within the week.
No trying to fight for it. Oh, no. Dang.
But how lucky.
The guy practically gave you a ride to Outback afterwards.
We actually,
like, get out here.
Like, divorce court was like our best day. We like fought over who was going to go to which bar. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
We were just, we just shouldn't have been married. It was fine.
How long were you married?
A year.
1 year?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It hardly even counts, except there was paperwork.
Yeah.
And I immediately had my eyes set back on Bob. And he was like, whoa, lady.
Yeah. You came in full speed ahead. And he was like, I thought you were married and moved on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, he was a fill-in, Bob.
He was such a
guy.
fill-in. Oh my gosh. He was always going to be the one that got away. Like, I am so thrilled that I got to marry him. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, as weird as this may sound, I trust people much more. I feel much more a connection to people when they have stories like that.
Yes, same. And I don't get to tell that story. I mean, I could tell it, but I'm really thankful to talk about kind of my hard stuff, because people tend to project a lot onto me that, look at you and your good marriage
perfect.
And your 2 kids, your girl, and all that stuff.
Your
and
white teeth.
Yeah. Oh, it just grates on me because I so badly want to prove how hard I've worked to get where I am, because I think it lends more credibility to where I'm at in my life.
It does.
Yeah, totally. So I appreciate the opportunity to be like, there was it was awful. And I, drank and drugged and did all the things for so many years. One of the things that I have going for me that a lot of my clients don't is I'm not shameful or mad at myself for any of that. Because to me, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, when I look at my story, I think, what else was I going to do? There was no one. There was no one was watching me. What else was I going to do? Like, it just makes sense. And that's one of the core things I really help people see. Like, you make sense.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter what you've done if you're looking from a brain perspective. So the Enneagram is a huge tool. Neuroscience. I teach people about their brains and their subconscious systems, because that's what's running the show.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it, is we're not here making these conscious choices with our little 4% of consciousness.
Right.
It's the 96% that we don't know what's happening that is running what we're doing. So I'm not mad at myself for my past and my choices.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course you did that.
Kind of like you, I'm good with people. I have a lot of deep conversations with people. And I feel like the people that have the most wisdom in life are almost always the people who had some sort of trauma.
Yep.
They end up making crazy, irrational decisions where they were being driven by unhealed parts of themselves that they weren't even aware of.
That's right.
It caused situations and circumstances in their life to be painful and quite terrible.
Yep.
And then they came to a position where it was like, I have to wake up to like what is actually happening with me, what's driving me. And then through hard work, they've come to a level of self-awareness and personal growth and healing and wisdom where they can then help other people.
Yep.
And it's funny that, I related to your story about how people wouldn't suspect that you came from that type of trauma.
Because I've never told you that. We've never talked about that.
No, you don't project that at all.
Right.
It's funny because I've gone through the same thing a lot with my book. When someone will read it, they'll go, I didn't know that. Like, I would have assumed your parents were always married, a healthy and happy environment. Like, because they see my family now.
Yep.
And they don't understand that, no. I've worked incredibly hard to get past a lot of things.
Do you have that same, like, I want people to know?
Not in my everyday life.
Sure.
But when someone is looking at my book and trying to assess, does this person have the credibility to talk about this to me?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because family is often people's most guarded thing. And for a lot of people, it's their biggest source of trauma in one way or another.
Absolutely.
And so for me to come to somebody and say, I can help you build a healthy and happy home when you come from a broken one, they don't care about what school you went to or anything. They want to know, like, what gives you the right to talk about this? Like,
that's right.
And then for a lot of people, I'm asking them to look at some of the most painful, traumatic events of their life, oftentimes things that they've never told anybody. For those reasons, I talk about certain painful events in my life, and people often come up to me and say, I've had multiple times people say, I've never said this to anybody, but like this happened or that happened.
Yep.
And then I'm able to help them understand, you see how that happening to you and you not really healing from it is affecting your relationships now. It's affecting your relationships with your children. It's affecting your professional mindset. And they kind of make connections.
Yes.
That's why I love Everything Connects.
It's the greatest thing.
Everything
and it's
connects.
so true.
Yeah.
It really does.
Do you coach in group settings? Is it one-on-one? Like, how do you do your best work? One-on-one with people?
That's a good question. I used to do solely one-on-one.
Yeah.
It was great. I thought it was my best work. And then I did small groups, and I thought that was my best work.
Yeah.
I still do a small number of one-on-one. I still have a few small groups, and now I'm transitioning to a whole new model where I created a course, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. Created a course, and so now there's a course that people can go and do a lot of the learning. And then there is weekly coaching with me as a group and a Facebook group. So it's more of like, it's a bigger group.
Right.
It's less high touch contact with me. So I'm keeping one-on-one available for people who really want to do that deep, deep, deep dive.
Right.
So it's a whole different model. Creating the course was so difficult because I do my best work one-on-one, right? Where I'm really able to gauge, how is this landing? What's happening? Did I lose you? You know, all these different things that are so important in coaching. So, and I'm not a great teacher, but to create a course, you're teaching.
Right.
So, but the course is really good. It turned out really good. It was like having a baby. It was 9 months of trying to pull out what I knew. It's also very vulnerable to say, hey, random person, I think this is what you need. I mean,
Right.
you know, because you wrote a book.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. But we start with a big orientation. I try to set their brain up to consume the information in a certain way. So one of the core teachings is there's the you having your experience, and there's the you that relates to the automatic you having your experience.
Hold on.
Yes.
I'm a public school kid.
Okay.
There's the
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
I got that part.
Automatic you,
Then there's the me relating to that experience.
which is your relationship to yourself.
Okay.
The most important relationship any of us will ever have. How do you treat yourself when you see yourself with the mask off?
Okay.
Ugh, makes me emotional.
So, man, one, I have to see myself with the mask off. And then two, I have to govern the way I talk to myself. Because I got to tell you, I'm hard on myself with the mask on.
That's right.
Where did you learn this?
I went to the life coach school, is what
life
it's
coach
called. Yeah, and they
Why did you smirk?
Because it's such a funny name for a
You
school.
smirk.
The life coach school.
Yeah. I want my life coach to have gone to school.
Me too. And
Yeah.
you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can just hang a shingle and be a life coach, which is also fine. That's a whole nother topic. I wanted teaching. I wanted tools. I wanted to have a clue of what I was doing. So, but the thing is, the tools are only as useful as the person wielding them. I got a great set of tools from that school, but I've since learned a whole bunch more about like embodiment is a huge piece of the work. Like, how do we actually be in our bodies? Which 6s are head types. We're in the middle of what's called the head triad. So we are the thinkiest thinkers on the Enneagram. So getting into our bodies is no small deal. So back to the program. There's all about thinking. Then there's really all about your emotions. How do you actually allow and process emotion so that they aren't driving your life, your decisions, your interactions, all those things. This is what I try to instill in my clients. Be fascinated by your brain. It's fascinating. Be fascinated by who you are. Instead of, I want to see parts of myself so then I can
Bash it over the head.
Yes,
So
because our brains tell us
I have to kill a part of me to be better.
that's it. I mean, you laugh, but that's what everybody thinks. That is literally what everybody thinks. So I'm trying to unprogram that and program fascination, interest, curiosity with who you are in the world. So then when you see your stuff come up, you're like, oh,
I know what
there's
this
that
is.
thing I do.
Yeah.
There's that thing I do when I'm stressed. There's that thing I do in my relationship. There's that thing I do.
Yeah.
But of course, we all want our pain to be someone else's fault.
So you tell me if this is true. One thing I saw about, because I've done my research, one thing I saw is that's important to 6s is the sense of belonging to a group. The
Yes.
sense of belonging. Is
It's
that
really
accurate?
interesting how that one plays out because it can be yes. It can also be I don't trust any groups. That's more my brand.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, how can they be the skeptics?
It goes,
But then they're also looking for a group of skeptics.
to feel safe and secure, a lot of sixes want to tuck into a community, an organization. That makes sense. And then they can be really blind to the ways that can be harmful. I almost can't even talk in those terms because I'm so not that person. I am so much, look at what's wrong with the organization. Look at what's wrong with groups. Like group think.
Oh, man.
Right?
Especially in
you
this
and
day
I,
and
oh my
age.
gosh.
Politically, socially.
This is a place you and I
economically.
really connect,
Yeah.
is we're like, this is not working over here. This isn't working over here. Let's see where this is actually problematic. Yeah.
In
Have a lot
so
of
many
conversations.
areas.
In so many areas.
And it's funny because typically these groups fall into extremes on either side, and then they both do this, and then they're both totally oblivious to their own hypocrisy, which is blatant on both sides.
That's right.
And I find myself as a person who, when we're pointing out like the hypocrisy of one group, I can go, oh my God, yeah. And I get in on the jokes like, look at that. It's so blatant. It's so obvious. It's so terrible. And then this group assumes that I'm a part of them.
That's right.
Which, when we're pointing out that hypocrisy, I am. But then when I turn and point it this way, then they're like, whoa, dude, I thought you were part of the group.
And this is one of the reasons I've thought you were a 6, because I'm like, oh, Anthony's got the not group thing, which is also potentially very 6y. Yeah. So it's kind of like who's in, who's out. So for people who kind of are wired like us, it's like, well, if you're too far in, then as far as I'm concerned, you're an out.
Yeah.
So what can be confusing, and what I help some 6s who are wired more like me see, is when I'm sitting on top of everyone, like, you're getting it wrong and you're getting it wrong, there's something I'm missing here. I don't like to look at that part.
Okay.
I like to feel the sense of, well, I see everything clearly. Y'all are idiots.
Who doesn't like to have that perspective?
I know.
That's great.
Oh. So that's where I really remember to turn it back on myself. Like, okay, who am I being when I'm so sure everybody's getting it wrong? I don't love that, but I do love helping people see their own blind spots. So, kind of balancing that without feeling or being superior.
Right. I love the idea of you doing one-on-one work, because I feel like when people get their sense of identity from a group, oftentimes you can't be totally objective about your own blind spots, your own weaknesses, because,
not at all.
I read we're getting ready to come upon another presidential election, which means 2 years of everybody ramping up and like going crazy and political.
And we never stopped. So
we never really stopped. But the political breakdown and political landscape, I think, is where a lot of people lose themselves.
Absolutely.
And so watching it all unfold with friends and family, and I'm sure you've been through this, as most people have been through this in the past several years, you see people you once had a certain amount of respect for, and you're like, person is kind of a different person than I thought they were. Much like you said, instead of judging that person and going, oh my God, he votes this way, he's an idiot, or he votes that way, he's an idiot, I try to have a little bit more comprehensive understanding of the person's background, the person's upbringing. And oftentimes I found that it's that sense of group where my grandfather was a Republican, his grandfather was a Republican. Our identity is in family, like certain key words, whether they be displayed by that group today or not. Right. Our identity is in the church and faith and family. And to
just denigrate all of that in another person is so dismissive and not correct, not fair.
When I've seen people like my left friend, political leaning friends, who will say, I don't understand how a person can vote for Donald Trump.
If I don't understand it, then that's the end of the story.
Right. I just don't understand how people could support Trump. But oftentimes what I think they're missing is, it's not that the person is even voting for a person. That's their identity. That's right. That's their family's background. That's their whole, and without that, so I was reading an article about how to potentially, because oftentimes people are debating or exchanging facts, and it's not changing the other person's perspective at all. No. Zero. And so I read an interesting article that said the reason that happens is because if you're undercutting a person's whole identity, you have to offer something else to rebuild it, or else they'll just continue to deny whatever.
And this is just one of the most obvious things in the world to me.
It seems common sense.
I'm like, I don't understand why you think that would go well.
Yeah.
And person, how do you feel when someone starts undercutting your identity? The thing is, we don't realize
Exactly.
what we've tied to our identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people, what's the term? Cognitive dissonance, where they go, no, they just dismiss it. They don't realize. I often say people, both left and right leaning people, without realizing it, they think they're opposite sides, but they're really just like opposite sides of the same coin.
It's the same idea of like, I'm the worst person in the world or I'm the best person in the world, right? That feels like very far apart.
Yeah.
It's just opposite sides of the same self-referential thing that's happening.
Yeah.
Neither is true.
Yeah.
We're all just people.
Yeah.
We're really all just people.
It's true. So
Yeah.
did you grow up in Texas?
Washington.
You grew up in Washington.
Yep.
So your family's background politically, were they politically involved?
So my mom was very left-leaning. My dad was right. So they just fought.
They did.
Yeah. I came up very, very liberal.
Okay.
It just made sense to me. Like the liberal ideas of things, taking
Sure.
care of people,
Right.
made sense to me.
What do they say? Younger people are typically liberal and
Yes.
older people are typically
Well,
more
once
conservative.
you got stuff to lose,
Yeah,
that's
right.
all real, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know who Steve Largent is?
Of course. Wide receiver,
Okay.
Seattle Seahawks.
So he was my first crush.
Okay.
Like I loved him. I could tell you plays. So when he retired,
I'm going to tell you something to blow your mind.
tell me.
You know his first job? Outback Steakhouse.
That's not
Hubba
true.
hubba.
That
No,
didn't
that's
even
not
exist then. I'm like, is it? Could it be? No.
Could it be?
No.
I knew it.
Everything connects. When he retired, bald, sat there. I think I was 8. I must have been a little older. Bald my head off. I was so sad. And then I found out he was a Republican. And my brain, I was like, what?
Oh, no.
I was so confused. It was hilarious. Yeah. I just remember that cognitive dissonance was real.
Yeah.
You're like, how's that possible?
Yeah.
So I grew up in Washington. One of the most liberal colleges in the country
Wow.
is in Washington, Evergreen State College.
Evergreen.
Yeah. So I went to college there, but here, this just shows the sixiness. So I went to the most liberal college in the country.
Mm-hmm.
While I was there, I listened to conservative talk radio on purpose
Keep yourself balanced.
to keep myself balanced
Right.
because I was terrified by the groupthink. Even though I agreed
Right.
and was learning, I saw the flaws
Yeah.
in this worldview. And I could see that just going all in on one, to me, just didn't seem like the way to be.
That's very wise for a young age.
I look back on that, I think so too.
That's very wise.
Yeah.
I do the same thing now, especially when something big happens, like
did the
something
same thing.
that drives a big divide between
Yep.
people. And I'm like, oh, I better see what the other side's saying about this.
So it's interesting to explore what drives that. We have our conscious ideas of what drives that.
Okay.
I think for me, if I'm honest, right, there's a certain amount of fear driving that because I don't want to be caught
Unprepared
not
for
knowing
the
something
argument.
unprepared.
Yeah.
That's the sixiness in it. Yeah.
I did see that. It's
Mm-hmm.
6-1. They want to be prepared.
For everything,
Yeah.
depending on where their areas of concern lie.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work has actually been letting that go, interestingly. Like I don't have to spend my precious life listening to people who I actually think are blowhards
Right.
to be prepared.
Right.
Some of that work has been to let that uncertainty be there
Yeah.
and to be able to say, this is what I think with my best thinking right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes to what I now believe in my heart, as opposed to looking for all the answers, another sexy thing, out here. Yeah. This is what they're saying, this is what they're saying. What do I actually think is a lot of the work too.
This is part of the reason that I had Kristin here today. She's smart. She's talented. You're an amazing person.
Hey, thanks.
Seriously, thank you so much for coming. And I couldn't agree with you more. Actually, part of the stuff that I've been doing politically is letting all that stuff go. Especially in this day and age, it's an interesting dynamic because you want to be informed. You don't want to be ignorant.
That's right.
But you also have to protect your mental, emotional bandwidth because we only have so much.
It's so true.
And the news outlets were constantly bombarding us with the latest update and this is the biggest crisis.
Yep.
And everything is a disaster and you need to pay attention to everything. They're also running a business and they're trying to keep eyeballs on their product,
Which is very hard these days.
which is very hard as everything's competing for people's attention.
And they all use fear. And as a 6, so 6s have a fear of fear. All humans have core fears.
Oh God, I'm going to get afraid.
Really? Seriously.
Oh God, I'm going to get scared.
But if you use our discussion argument as a really good example, right?
Yeah.
If I don't have a rebuttal,
Yeah.
I'm going to feel unprepared. I'm
Yeah.
going to feel scared. I'm going to feel uncertain.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that never happens.
Yeah. I think we're in a mutual group on social media. It's a race-based, race-related group. Like,
The local one. Yep.
is there a bigger one that we're involved in that I'm not aware of?
No.
As a person who doesn't necessarily subscribe to group thinking, I think my entire life being literally black and white in America
Seriously.
has put me in a very unique position. That political thing I referenced happens the same thing with race. There'll be when a black group saying, man, white folks have this tendency. And I go, man, do they? Look at them. And they go, wow, that's great insight. And when I turn to the group and say, hey, you know what? We could do better collectively. Like, they go, whoa, man.
Yeah.
WTF.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I've seen you comment and I've seen you doing social awareness and like reading books about race relations and stuff like that.
Yep.
Talk to me a little about your journey in that regard. As a white cis woman.
Yeah. I check all the privilege boxes except female. Where I think a lot of liberals fall down is application. It's like, it doesn't actually matter what you know, especially if your main goal is to be like, hey, black person, I'm not a threat. Like, it just, it's so, it hits close because I've done all of this wrong, right? I've done all of this wrong. I've thought of myself as, a white woke person. Nobody gives a shit if I'm a white woke person, if I'm continuing to contribute to all the systems that I think are bad and want other people to do things about. Like, I see it. Well, what am I doing? So a very tiny example is for my program, I have a payment plan. That's just a straight payment plan. You don't get anything if you pay more up front. This is to create equity in my business. It's not something I'm like talking about.
Yeah.
But it's a way that I'm trying to build a business that is equitable.
And you're conscious of it during the construction of your business.
Yeah, and that's just one example. So there's all these ways in which we can be anti-racist, and throwing our opinions online
doesn't really do much.
It doesn't do much.
No.
And it always is weird. And then whenever anything happens, it's like, what do people think about that? It's something I've struggled with a lot in terms of having a public facing online business. Like, do I say what I think about things?
Right.
Does it matter? Who does it matter to?
Right.
I actually asked my audience once, and you cannot make this shit up. I got 3 responses. Do y'all care what I think about things? One person said, absolutely. It's very important to me. One person said, absolutely not. Okay. I don't care what you think about anything. And the third person said, it depends. I was like, what the?
Well, there you
cannot.
go. Yeah.
So I just have to answer that for myself.
Yeah.
I try to highlight, accounts of people of color, but I don't say,
Y'all want a black person's opinion? Check out so and so. Yeah.
Even stuff with you sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is brilliant. I want to share what Anthony did. But then I have a little point of pride. Is this so gross that I'm admitting this? I'm like,
no.
Anthony's, ew.
He's my friend.
This is my mess, right? But I'm here to, we are who we are.
We all do that to some degree.
Right?
We all do.
Yeah. But those sorts of things, it's so easy to just to make it about us. So when we're doing anti-racist work, it's like, how do I actually not make it about me? That's really difficult.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do.
I think
and it's real hard. I've not nailed that at all.
I think you're winning even in just the awareness to evaluate that. If you ask yourself the question, you're already where that's all we want people to do. Is evaluate yourself. Like
evaluate yourself and don't ever stop. Like, if you are a white person, don't stop at like, I read a book or I shared a thing or I heard a thing.
Yeah.
Really go deeper. And that just shows your level of capacity, your level of care. One of the things that I really feel sad about is, so I generally work with white women. That's just who's attracted to me. That makes sense.
Does make sense.
There isn't a place for complex conversations. This is the other thing I try to hold space for, is it actually is okay if as a white woman this is hard for you. That doesn't play on social. If you're a white woman, you're having any trouble with any of this, take it. And I get that. But then where then do they go to actually?
Let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So white women on social media, you're saying it's not the platform now, the socially acceptable platform, than to say I'm having issues like as a white woman.
Or I'm having issues with figuring out this complicated race, gender, all the things. And I get that.
The times aren't compassionate for them. Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And going to a black person's face and saying, what should I do? And not all white women, all that kind of crap.
Here's another assignment. Here's another assignment for you, person of color. Tell me what to do.
Exactly.
Like, teach me.
Yeah.
Well-meaning, but it's just adding more work to the people who are already trying to do the work of freaking survival oftentimes.
Absolutely. And really understanding that white women still have their own trauma, right?
Sure.
White women still have their own journeys. White women are still raising families and doing things and trying to, even though absolutely the privilege is there, how do we actually hold some kind of healing space for everyone? And do we see this work as healing people, or how do we see it? That's how I see it.
Yeah.
That's my sort of umbrella view.
Yeah.
And I also have learned that I have a lane, and I should probably just stay in it.
See, yeah.
I know. This is where you and I diverge on some things, which I love.
So I tend to appreciate conversation, and very much like when we talked about politically, people have an identity and you don't want to undercut that identity. I tried to create space for varying views and to let people know, like, hey man, you can say what you think to me and on my page and around because very often people now, they don't want to say anything about race, especially like white people, because they go, it's not my place to really say anything. And so this artificial relationship exists where they go, I have an idea, but I better not say anything. And because they don't say anything, they don't get any genuine response back. And there's no real like evolution of understanding. So I understand what you're saying, but I want smart people to like say what they mean. And sometimes that's going to mean saying the wrong thing, only wrong in a sense where you're like, because from your level of understanding, you're like, this is the truth. And then someone will come in and say, your level of understanding has blind spots here, here, and here. And here's how you can grow.
So do you have the psychological capacity to do that publicly?
Me?
No. What I'm saying is people, if you want to have those conversations publicly, it requires a psychological stability.
It does.
That not to be super skeptical.
Not most people have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a big way. So I'm real happy to have those conversations one-on-one, and I'm even happy to do it on social. But in my mind, a lot of times, like, where is my energy right now?
Yeah.
Is this a conversation that's going to advance anybody, anywhere, in any way?
Right.
Probably not. So I'm going to go to work over here. Because to your point about, we have limited capacity. There's limited hours in the day. We're trying to raise families. We're trying to build businesses. We're doing all these things.
That's true.
So I really want my energy to go where it matters. And I think just for me, I did realize how much I was still worried about what people would think of me.
There's that sexiness.
Well, there's that humanness too, right?
That's
though.
True. Good
I
point.
mean, I'm out here.
Yeah.
And I do worry about that. Less so, as I go on, as I get older, as really it's just like, I don't have time to give a shit what you actually think about me.
Right.
Really letting people have their inaccurate opinions, that's a heavy lift for me.
Yeah.
And a lot of my clients, it's a real heavy lift, right? We spend a lot of energy trying to manage people's brains about us. All that work has to be done before you're going to have a useful conversation on social media. It's one of your gifts.
Well,
and it's not a small deal.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel really safe in your space to have nuanced opinions about things and to be shown, I've done obviously this work too, but it's not without consequence when someone comes in for most people and shows them a blind spot, especially if it's one they already know. Like, not every Facebook comment can be, so that's annoying.
Yeah. People
that just want to come in and it's a real tough medium. I honestly don't know how you do it. It's really impressive.
Well, thanks. Sarah says the same thing when I start touching on certain stuff. She's like, man, you're going there.
Why do you think people trust you to do it? Because your page is great.
Thanks.
The conversations are great.
Very much the same reason they trust you.
You are who you are.
Authenticity.
Yes.
And I've been this person for a long time, and I'm always trying to learn and grow and evolve.
Right.
And so I think people trust that. And just like any other person, my opinion and perspective may change as I gain more wisdom and insight. But my experiences are pretty varied, and oftentimes they're wider than the average person.
I also want us all to assume that about people. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about, is we have this broad range of experiences.
Yeah.
I like to assume that most people do. Even if it didn't look like mine, that's an assumption I go in with.
I imagine it's hard to turn this off when you're having your own personal relationships with people, or do you not?
Okay, so I'm a better friend and wife and parent since I become a life coach, because there is the correct avenue for all of my massive energy towards helping people. Okay. I've been able to, I didn't realize how much I did it in my life until I learned all of this about myself. But ultimately, I don't turn it off. It's just really well honed now. Like, I am who I am. I'm someone, like, if you want to be close to me, great, you're going to be growing. It's just how it is to be friends with me.
I'm kind of the same way. Yeah.
Like, I'm a great friend for the right person.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that that's okay. That it's not that I'm too much.
Not everybody wants that.
Everybody wants that. And I've really had to learn that, and then not devalue them for not wanting it.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't know there was a back half.
Right?
I got the first part down. No, I'm kidding. No, you're 100%
Kind of kidding.
right. Yeah, kind of kidding.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons, even though we haven't seen each other in person in however many years, there's that connection, because
right
it's
away.
Like, we want to grow. That's who we are.
Could have been yesterday I saw you.
Seriously. Yeah. So crazy.
Do you make people call you coach?
Oh, God, what?
Because I would.
Ew. When people do, I always have a little, I'm like, thanks, coach. I'm like, ooh. It's so valuable to speak to the people that want the complexity, that know that I'm just over here and this is what I think and feel, and I'm just over here, that's not the whole story. And I really believe in my heart that more of that is what's needed.
It's what's needed.
100%. It's definitely a conversation that I want to be helping elevate as well, because what are we doing here? Like, things aren't working. The people are not okay. When I look around right now, I'm like, oh, the people are not doing okay. They don't have a skill set to be with their discomfort. So everyone's just throwing their shit out in the world, and it's not functional. You know, there's real, this is very sexy to say, but there's real perils here. And we are creating it. Like, we are creating it. It's not they're creating it or they're creating it. Like, we are. So yeah, I feel real passionate. I like doing the work on a small level. I also feel a call to, bring it to a bigger level.
I want to ask you, the listener, are you evaluating yourself? Are you looking deep within yourself? What would you like to say to someone who may never come across this type of information again, who doesn't listen to this normally, but they mess with me and today they got a good message from the coach? What would you tell them about looking inward and evaluating themselves?
If you want any kind of sustainable change in your life, it will never come from negative self-flagellation. It's how we think it all works. It's 100% not how it works. To create lasting positive change in your life, you have to build a positive relationship with who you're already being. That is what creates the space for change. The quicker you can do that, the quicker you can make change. It's really the bottom line. So how do you, my advice would be to find a way.
Professional advice.
My professional advice is to find a way to appreciate who you're being, to find out how you make sense for exactly what you're doing. And instead of trying to get rid of that part of you, really learn how to befriend it.
Wow. Dang. So there it is. There's your homework. Befriend yourself, learn yourself, understand yourself, be gentle to yourself, and don't be self-flagellating?
Yeah.
I don't. Like whip yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It does not work.
It does not work. I'm Kristin Messegee. You can find me at kristinmessegee.com. And the truth is, everything connects.
You rocked it. Man,
Thanks,
that was
so
awesome.
fun. That was so fun.